What if I told you that in 1980, an entire lake in Louisiana simply vanished into the earth? Not gradually over decades, but in a matter of hours, creating a whirlpool so powerful it sucked in barges, drilling rigs, and 65 acres of land, forever changing our understanding of what lies beneath America's surface. This is the story of Lake Peigneur, a mystery that geologists still struggle to fully explain, and one that reveals just how little we truly know about the hidden world beneath our feet. Now, most people think they understand what happened here. The official story is straightforward. A drilling accident punctured an underground salt mine, water rushed in, and the lake drained. Case closed. But here's what makes this story far more intriguing than any textbook will tell you. The scale of what occurred defies conventional geology, and the evidence suggests forces were at work that we still don't completely comprehend. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the actual events of November 20th, 1980, using recently uncovered details that paint a far more mysterious picture than you've heard before. We'll explore why this disaster reveals gaps in our geological knowledge that scientists are still trying to fill, and examine evidence that suggests the official explanation might be incomplete. The proof. By the end of that day, a peaceful 10-foot deep fishing lake had become Louisiana's deepest body of water at 200 feet, and the forces that caused this transformation operated on a scale that shouldn't have been possible according to everything we know about underground water dynamics. Let me take you back to that morning in 1980, when the impossible became reality. The sun hadn't yet risen on November 20th, 1980, but deep beneath Lake Peigneur, master electrician Junius Gaddison was already at work in the Jefferson Island salt mine. At 1,300 feet below the surface, surrounded by walls of pure white salt carved from ancient geological formations, he was gathering supplies. Just another routine morning in what had been a stable operation for over 60 years. But here's where our story takes its first mysterious turn. The salt formation beneath Lake Peigneur wasn't just any underground deposit. It was part of something called the Jefferson Island Salt Dome, a massive geological structure formed over millions of years when ancient seas evaporated, leaving behind these buried mountains of salt. What most people don't realize is that these salt domes are geological anomalies. They don't behave like normal rock formations. Salt is plastic. It flows and moves under pressure, creating underground landscapes that can shift and change in ways we're still learning about. As Junius reached for a spool of electrical wire, he heard something that made him pause. A muffled sound echoing through the tunnels. Not the familiar noise of mining operations, but something else entirely. Then another hollow bang. And another. Now, experienced miners develop an almost supernatural ability to read the sounds of the earth around them. Junius had worked these tunnels for years, and he knew immediately that what he was hearing wasn't normal. But what he didn't know, what no one could have known, was that 1,300 feet above him, a series of events was unfolding that would challenge everything geologists thought they understood about underground water behavior. At that same moment, on the surface of Lake Peigneur, the Texaco drilling crew was dealing with their own problem. Their 14-inch drill bit had become stuck at 1,228 feet, just 72 feet above where Junius was working. But here's what makes this coincidence so unsettling. According to all available maps and surveys, there should have been hundreds of feet of solid earth between that drill and the mine. So how did a drill bit end up so close to chambers that, according to official records, it should never have reached? This is where the story becomes truly mysterious, because what happened next defied every model of how underground water systems behave. When Junius saw that first trickle of murky water creeping along the mine floor, followed by fuel drums floating in the growing stream, he immediately understood the implications. Water was entering the mine from above, from the lake. But what he witnessed next would have seemed impossible to any geologist of that era. The water wasn't just seeping in. It was arriving with a force that suggested something far more dramatic was occurring on the surface. Something that would soon turn Lake Peigneur into one of the most powerful whirlpools ever recorded in North America. As Junius hit the evacuation alarm and called for the mine elevator, 55 men working deeper in the tunnels began their race against time. But here's what makes their survival so remarkable. They were escaping not just from rising water, but from a geological event that was literally dissolving the ground beneath their feet. You see, when water meets salt, something extraordinary happens. The salt doesn't just erode, it dissolves completely, turning solid rock into nothing. The massive pillars that had supported those underground chambers for decades were simply vanishing into the flood. Meanwhile, on the surface, something was happening that shouldn't have been possible according to conventional understanding of lake dynamics. The Texaco drilling platform began to tilt. At first, just slightly, barely noticeable. But within an hour, the entire rig lurched hard to one side, metal groaning and cables snapping, before the massive structure simply vanished into what should have been only 10 feet of water. Think about that for a moment. A drilling rig taller than the lake was deep, completely disappeared beneath the surface. That's not just unusual. It's physically impossible unless something extraordinary was happening beneath the water. And then the lake itself began to move. What the crew witnessed next has been described as one of the most terrifying natural phenomena ever recorded in the United States. The water above the drilling site began to swirl, forming a dark whirlpool that grew stronger by the second. Soon, it was as if someone had pulled a massive drain plug from the bottom of the lake. But here's what makes this truly mysterious. The force of that whirlpool was far greater than anything that should have resulted from a simple hole in the lake bed. 11 supply barges were pulled into the spiraling vortex one by one. A tugboat running at full throttle couldn't escape the suction. What kind of underground void could create such incredible pulling power? The answer lies in something that geologists are still trying to fully understand: the true size and complexity of the Jefferson Island salt dome. Because as that water poured into the mine, it wasn't just filling a few tunnels. It was dissolving an underground landscape that was far more extensive than anyone had mapped. Down in the mine, as the last group of miners crammed into the elevator cage, they were witnessing the collapse of a geological structure that had taken millions of years to form. The 1,500-foot level disappeared completely in a matter of minutes. Entire chambers that had stood for decades simply melted away as the lake water turned solid salt into liquid brine. But the most mysterious part was yet to come. As the mine collapsed beneath the lake, something extraordinary happened. Trapped air from the underground chambers was forced upward with incredible pressure. First, it emerged as low hissing sounds from the mine's air shafts. Then, suddenly, a geyser erupted from the center of the whirlpool, shooting a column of water and debris 400 feet into the air. The force of that explosion rattled windows miles away. Think about the underground pressures required to create such a blast. What we were witnessing wasn't just a mine collapse. It was the violent rearrangement of an entire geological formation. And then came the most baffling phenomenon of all. As Lake Peigneur drained into the earth, something happened that reversed the natural order of an entire waterway. The Delcambre Canal, which had flowed southward from the lake to the Gulf of Mexico for as long as anyone could remember, suddenly stopped, and then began flowing backward. For 2 days, millions of gallons of salt water from the Gulf of Mexico rushed inland through the canal, creating a 50-foot waterfall in the middle of what used to be Lake Peigneur. The sight was so extraordinary that people drove from hundreds of miles away just to witness it. But here's what scientists still struggle to explain. What underground void could be large enough to reverse the flow of an entire waterway? What we're talking about isn't just a collapsed mine. It's a geological cavity of almost unimaginable proportions. When the water finally stopped flowing, Lake Peigneur had been transformed from a shallow, 10-foot-deep fishing spot into the deepest lake in Louisiana at 200 feet. Its freshwater ecosystem was gone forever, replaced by salt water that had permanently altered the chemistry of the entire area. Now, you might expect that with such a massive disaster, investigators would have clear answers about what went wrong. But here's where the mystery deepens. In the aftermath, there was almost nothing left to examine. The drilling rig was gone. The mine was buried under millions of gallons of water. The original borehole had widened into an enormous sinkhole, erasing any evidence of its exact position. Two theories emerged. Either Texaco had drilled in the wrong location, or the mine maps were inaccurate and the underground chambers extended farther than anyone knew. But with no physical evidence remaining, investigators could never determine which explanation was correct. And here's what makes this truly unsettling. Both theories assume we had accurate knowledge of what was underground in the first place. But what if our understanding of the Jefferson Island Salt Dome was more limited than anyone wanted to admit? Recent geological studies have revealed that salt dome formations are far more complex and dynamic than scientists understood in 1980. These structures can shift and change over time, creating underground landscapes that don't match surface surveys. They can contain cavities and chambers that form through natural processes we're still discovering. What if the Lake Peigneur disaster wasn't the result of human error, but evidence that these underground formations are more mysterious and unpredictable than we've ever acknowledged? The financial settlements were enormous, over $44 million in total. But the real cost was something far more significant: the realization that our knowledge of what lies beneath America's surface might be dangerously incomplete. Today, more than 4 decades later, Lake Peigneur remains a different body of water than it was before that November morning. Its depths hold the remains of an underground world that we barely understood when it existed, and may never fully comprehend now that it's gone. The disaster revealed something profound about the hidden geology beneath our feet, that vast, complex structures can exist just below the surface, completely unknown to us until the moment they dramatically reshape the landscape above. What other geological mysteries lie waiting beneath America's lakes and rivers? What other underground worlds exist that we haven't mapped, haven't studied, haven't even imagined? The Lake Peigneur disaster suggests that our planet's hidden depths may hold far more secrets than we're comfortable admitting. And sometimes, those secrets have the power to make entire lakes simply vanish into the earth, leaving behind questions that we're still trying to answer. The next time you look at a peaceful lake or drive over seemingly solid ground, remember Lake Peigneur. Remember that beneath your feet might lie geological structures so complex and mysterious that their very existence could reshape everything you think you know about the ground beneath America. Because in the end, the most unsettling truth about the Lake Peigneur disaster isn't what we learned from it. It's how much it revealed about what we still don't know.